Delhi Sultanate, the five dynasties under Delhi Sultanate, starting from slaves, Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid, and Lodi, that we have understood in our separate class. In this section, we would focus on the administration, society, and culture under these five dynasties. So, these dynasties remained for a period of more than 320 years, and initially, the society was divided into various classes. The highest among these were the aristocrats, these were the nobility, and they were basically leading a rich and a luxurious lifestyle. Next to them were, so most of the high officials were part of the aristocrats. The next to them were the ulemas or the Hindu priests. They were responsible for giving advice to the administration. So all the high officials seeked advice from either the ulemas or the Hindu priests, and these priests or ulemas lived on the land grant that was given by the sultan or the gifts that was given by the common people. Next to them were the merchants and the officials or the artisans. This was a economically well-to-do class, and they were mainly those who were living in town. Finally, there were the common people. These were the peasantry. They were extremely poor, did not had enough land, and in most of the cases, they had to pay heavy taxes. Also, land revenues were taken from them, and in case of any natural calamity, this was the clan or the class that was worst affected because of the natural calamities. Next, we would understand the caste system. Now, the rigid caste system existed during the time of the Sultanate period. Women were one of the major focus, we could say, and some of the reform movements which started later had its origin or roots because of the prevalent issues which were seen during the Sultanate period. Some of the common ones were the Sati Pratha, where the woman was burnt alive with the funeral of the husband, and this was considered as a ceremony where beating of drums was also seen. The next was the issue of child marriage. Also, in numerous cases, Parda system, and this Parda system also led to denial of education. So low education for female was one of the major concerns. And finally, seclusion. That means if there is any outsider coming in, the woman was supposed to have parda or cover the face, and this was mainly seen in the upper caste societies. So Ibn Battuta quoted the things or the kind of practices that were present in the Hindu families during that time. Specifically, sati was quoted by Ibn Battuta. Now, those were the kind of issues that were prevalent in the caste system. Coming on to administration. Now, into administration, we have the very simple idea that the whole system was twofold. One was the military and the other was the aristocracy. So aristocracy or the nobility, as we said, were those high officials that led a very luxurious life, and then was the military living. So Sultan had to supplement the Muslim laws by framing their own regulations, and in no case open violation to Islamic laws were considered. Also, they were not allowed that Muslim divines could dictate. So there were twofold important aspects under the militaristic style, we could say. Sultan had the prominent position. Now, Sultan was considered the head of three important departments. That was the political department, the legal, and the military department, and therefore was responsible for administration, was responsible for law and order, and maintaining peace in the kingdom. Power, as we said, was mainly based on military, and administration was based on the feudal system. Government was then divided into various departments, and each department had an official in charge for that certain department. So among all these departments, four important departments are there that we would understand today. The first is Diwan-e-Wazarat. Now, Diwan-e-Wazarat was the Department of Revenue. Now, this Department of Revenue was headed by Wazir, who was also the Chief Minister. The next is Diwan-e-Arz. Diwan-e-Arz is the military department. Now, military department was held by Arz-e-Mumalik. So Arz-e-Mumalik was responsible for the military, and he was responsible to recruit, equip and pay the army. The next is Diwan-e-Risalat. Diwan-e-Risalat focused on religious matter. Now under this we have the Chief Sadar or the Qazi, who were responsible for it. Qazi was also responsible for justice. So law and order and justice department was also under the Qazi. Then we had Diwan-e-Insha. Insha was responsible for both domestic and foreign affairs. So all matters dealing within the state and outside the state were dealt by Diwan-e-Insha. So just to summarize again, Diwan-e-Wazarat for revenue, Diwan-e-Arz for military, Diwan-e-Risalat for religion. So R for Risalat, R for religion, that's how you can remember. And Diwan-e-Insha for domestic and foreign affairs. So those were the four administrative major departments that were prevalent during the Sultanate period. Coming on to the village. In the village, we had three important persons, Muqaddam, Patwari and Munsif. Muqaddam managed the village administration. Also, Muqaddam was usually responsible for the village, but sometimes there were Hindu officials who were also appointed. The next was Munsif. Munsif supervised the accounts of revenue. So all the accounts were taken by Munsif. And the next was Patwari. Patwari was related to the local records, the land records. Now, four kind of taxes were very important, and those were seen during the period of Delhi Sultanate. Those were Jizya. Now, Jizya was the tax that was levied on non-Muslims. Zakat was the tax that was paid by Muslims. Kharaj was the tax that was the land tax, and Khamas was the tax which was 1/5 of the spoil of war. So those were the four important taxes that were given by the local villagers and were collected by the village headmen. So village administration, I repeat again, was under Muqaddam. Muqaddam was the head of the village administration. We had Patwari, who focused on local records, and Munsif, who maintained the accounts. The next is understanding the Iqta system. Now, Iqta is the province or the territory, and each Iqta was headed by a Iqtadar. Now, Iqtadar's role was very, very important. Iqtadar was given no cash. So all his revenue were derived in the form of land which was offered to the officer. So land was offered and no cash was given to the Iqtadar. Iqtadar would collect the revenue from the Iqta or the province, keep a certain amount with himself and pay the remaining to the Sultan. Also, they would have to have a fixed amount which would be paid annually to the Sultan. Also, the income and the expenditure had to be recorded and maintained very, very carefully. Now, this system of Iqta was very important as the grants were as revenue from the piece of land to the officer and was not in the form of paying cash salaries. Very, very important. And this was the system that later on further continued. The next is the economy. Now, economy is very, very important to understand. Few of the important centers, for example, Delhi, Daulatabad in the south, as we have seen, Devagiri, the present Maharashtra, Lahore presently in Pakistan, and Lucknowati, Lucknowati, that is Lucknow as of now. So those are the four important trading centers which were seen as part of the economy. Now, what kind of trade relations existed? Trade relations were very, very unique. Trade was seen with China, Tibet, Central Asia, Afghanistan, Persia, Malay Peninsula, Tibet, that we already mentioned, Bhutan. So those were the neighboring areas, the subcontinent of India, as we could say, were the areas where trade was seen. Now, as the trade flourished, we saw two major reasons why trade was successful. First was a well condition of the roads, and the second was the coins. Now, under coins, Iltutmish, who was from the Mamluk dynasty or the slave dynasty, introduced silver coins. These silver coins were known as tanka. Later on, we have seen in the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq and his failure policies that even copper coins were introduced. But in all of the scenario, we have seen that goods were brought and sold at the marketplace, and each of the town had a marketplace. So towns had the marketplace where the exchange of goods and commodities took place, and this coins became a item of transaction. Agriculture in all case was the mainstay of the economy. When it comes to agriculture, during the time of Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, we have seen that the land revenue rose to 50% of the produce, which was significantly very, very high. And this was one of the reasons that we have witnessed the unpopularity of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and we have discussed this under the failures of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. The next is the kind of industries that flourished during that time. So textile definitely was one of the major industries. Sugar industry, paper industry, and hardware industry were some of the common industries which were seen. The next we would understand is the Indo-Islamic architectural style. Now, as the name suggests, Indo and Islamic, so it was a well blend of the Hindu and the Muslim architectural styles, and this was seen across all the 5 dynasties starting from slave till the Lodi dynasty. The reason solely being that Muslim emperors or rulers came to India, and the craftsmen whom they employed were the Hindu craftsmen. So there was indeed a blend of the two styles which was finally seen as a product, and this was a highly decorative style. As you can see in this image, there are arches that have been drawn. So arch, then we have domes. The top section that you can see here, the minarets, are some of the classic examples and the development. Most interesting to note, under Islam, any image of human or animal is prohibited. So what kind of designs could be drawn then? If no animals, no humans, the only design that remains is either a floral design or geometrical designs or calligraphy. Now, here you can see the floral designs and the calligraphy architecture that is seen. Now, this calligraphy again had verses from Quran which were inscribed in the architectural structures. So, these were the ways under which the structures were made and decorated. Again, it is important to note, most of the developments that took place during that time were made in red sandstone. So, the most widely used material for construction, for architecture during that time was red sandstone, and arches, domes, minarets were some of the classic examples of those period. Now, what kind of styles were popular? During the Mamluk or the slave dynasty and the Khilji dynasty, ornamental styles of architecture were seen. However, when it came to the Tughlaq period, when we saw the Tughlaqabad fort or the Firoz Shah Kotla built by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, those were much more simple. And when it comes to Lodi dynasty, the structures were much more lavish and dome structures were seen. Lavish we can understand with the example of Lodi Gardens in Delhi. So that was established during the Lodi dynasty. So that is a kind of brief outline about the kind of structures. Coming on to the specific structures. During the Mamluk or the slave dynasty, we have seen three major structures. One is the Adai Din Ka Jhopda in Ajmer, Quwatul Islam Mosque in Delhi, and Qutub Minar built by Qutubuddin Aibak. Now, Qutubuddin Aibak was responsible for all the three structures that we have discussed, but Qutub Minar being so unique that it was built in the memory of Qutubuddin Bakhtiyar Khaki, a Sufi saint, and the work was started by Qutubuddin Aibak, completed by Iltutmish, his slave, who was the next successor of the slave dynasty. So this was about the slave dynasty. Now, of this, Qutub Minar is as of now considered a UNESCO heritage site and has been protected. The next is the Khilji dynasty. Under Khilji dynasty, during the time of Alauddin Khilji, so A for Alauddin Khilji and A for the two structures, so Alai Darwaza and Alai Minar are the two developments that have been seen during the period of Alauddin Khilji. The next is the period of Tughlaq dynasty. Now, two developments again, Tughlaqabad fort built by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and Firoz Shah Kotla built by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So, Firoz Shah Kotla in the name of Firoz Shah Tughlaq and Tughlaqabad fort by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. So, those are the two important structures. Besides the Tughlaqabad fort, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq is also responsible for building the third city of Delhi. Firoz Shah Tughlaq established the Firoz Shah Kotla and a new capital of Delhi with Firoz Shah Kotla as one of the major forts. Coming on to the Lodi dynasty, we have seen that Ibrahim Lodi created the tomb of his father. So it was the tomb of Sikandar Lodi which was created. Also, besides this, numerous regional centers were seen. For example, in Mandu, which was one of the regions presently in Madhya Pradesh, we have seen Wagh Mahal. So a nice blend of palaces, forts were seen even in places like Mandu. In the south, we have the Vijayanagar, where temple structures like those seen in Hampi were discovered. Coming on to the structure of Qutub Minar. As we said, it was built in the memory of Qutubuddin Bakhtiyar Khaki, who was a Sufi saint, built by Qutubuddin Aibak, the first founder of the slave dynasty, completed by the real founder of the slave dynasty, Iltutmish. So the history of Qutub Minar in itself is very, very important and rather interesting. The next is the kind of painting structures. Now, Delhi Sultanate witnessed numerous styles of painting. The most important among those were two of those. One is the miniature painting style, that is small drawings that were seen, and the next is fresco. Now, fresco is nothing but what happens is on a wet wall when you start painting and this is done by the skilled painters, we have frescoes which are created. Now, fresco was one of the important segment of the development during the Delhi Sultanate period, and these were the kind of paintings which were seen in most of the palaces, most of the temples. Coming on to music, four important musical instruments were seen: sitar, rabab, sarangi and tabla. Now this was a blend of Arabic music style and Persian music style and was known as Hindustani classical music. So Hindustani classical music and its origin has been important. I repeat, the kind of instruments that were used are sitar, rabab, tabla and sarangi, and the dance form was Kathak. Now this dance form was commonly seen in the courts, and moreover the kind of songs which were sung were devotional in nature. Amir Khusro is one of the major poets during the time of Delhi Sultanate. Amir Khusro is believed to be the inventor of sitar. He is also one who laid the foundations for two important music styles. One is the Qawwali and the other is Ghazal. Qawwali is a devotional music. Ghazal is a poetry with melody. Amir Khusro was initially born in 1253 in Uttar Pradesh, and he was a person who was well read in Hindi and Persian and was believed to be a Sanskrit scholar along with a Persian scholar, one of the great musicians of his time. And as we said, he was considered to be the inventor of sitar. There have been interesting stories about Amir Khusro. Once a time he was passing by and he felt thirsty, so he stopped by in a village, and one of the women there recognized that he is Amir Khusro and has been known for his music and poetry. So there was a game that the women in the village played, and they gave Amir Khusro simply 4 words and asked them to create couplets or kind of poem based on those 4 words. Those 4 words were Kheer, Charkha, Kutta and Dhol, and immediately within a few hours Amir Khusro was able to compose the couplet, and that was खीर पकाई जतन से चरखा दिया चलाए आया कुत्ता खा गया तू बैठी ढोल बजाए. And that's how Amir Khusro was known for his poetry. Now coming on to the style which was seen as a blend of the Hindu and the Muslim style. So there were Sufi saints along with the Bhakti movement. So Hindu movements and Bhakti movements were given equal importance. Among the Sufi saints, 2 important saints were Nizamuddin Auliya of Delhi and Nasiruddin Chiragh Delhi. Both of them were significant figures in Sufism. Nasiruddin Chiragh Delhi was also known as Roshan Chiragh Delhi, and Nizamuddin Auliya is on whose names we have Hazrat Nizamuddin in Delhi. Both of them, along with Amir Khusro, were responsible for spreading Qawwalis, the devotional music, and as we said, along with the Sufism, which was amongst the Muslims, and the Bhakti movement, which was among the Hindus, the idea of religious tolerance was preached. Equality, harmony, liberal attitude was propounded among the common people. This was till the time of 15th century, and from the 16th century we have seen the start of the Mughal dynasty. When it comes to the Bhakti saints, the Bhakti movement was seen by 3 important scholars during those time: Kabir, Mirabai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kabir was one of the weavers who also wrote poetries and doha. And the followers of Kabir were known as Kabirpanthi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was one of the major persons who propounded the Bhakti movement in the regions of Bengal, and his ideas of Kirtan have been very popular. Mirabai was known to have devotional worship to Lord Krishna, and all of these Bhakti saints basically focused on Kirtans and Bhajans. The last thing that we need to understand is the development in terms of language and literature. Now, 4 important languages were there: Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit and Urdu, which later evolved as a blend of Persian and Hindi. The word Urdu means camp, and this was the language which was used by soldiers to communicate with the other soldiers from other territories. So Urdu slowly and gradually became one of the most popular forms of language, which was known by a huge number of people. Persian was the language of the nobility and the administration. Amir Khusro is known to write in Persian. Similarly, Amir Hassan Dehlvi was writing in Persian. Arabic was a common language which was used mainly by the traders coming from the regions of West Asia, and Sanskrit was a high learning language of Hindus. However, we have seen Amir Khusro, who was a brilliant scholar of Sanskrit and Persian, both of those. There have been great historians during this period. Some of those are Minhazul Siraj and Ziauddin Barni. So those were also responsible for development of the literature during the Delhi Sultanate period. So in this lecture, we have understood how administration, economy, art and architecture and development of language flourished during the Delhi Sultanate period, and how across the various dynasties we have seen the different styles of architecture and their evolution. We would be covering many more interesting lectures in history. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.